Steve Evans is sacked at Rotherham as Charlton batter Bolton and Reading get themselves into the playoff places. Welcome to the League One Lowdown. Hello and welcome to the League One Lowdown podcast here on the Deck Network. Myself, Jamie Johnson and Seb Jones. It's the review show as usual. Seb, how are you?
Very good, thank you, Jamie. Yeah, good to be back on again as usual. How are you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good as well, thank you. A weekend away from the football for me. So a nice sort of a break, if you like. So I'm looking forward to talking about the football still and lots to talk about on and off the pitch in today's show. It's been another busy weekend as we get towards the end of the season.
Yes, yeah, it certainly has been. Yeah, plenty of off-the-field matters, which I'm sure we're going to get right into that one. And myself as well. Yeah, wasn't at the Barnsley game as I have been in recent weeks, but my family were there, so I've heard what's about it. So I'm sure we'll get onto that regretfully a little bit later on. But yeah, plenty to cover. And yeah, you're going to kick us off with off-the-field matters that we heard on Sunday morning, aren't you?
Well, that's it. Yeah, we've got to start with the big news. Of course, what I mentioned right at the top in terms of Steve Evans being sacked by Rotherham United. I don't think it's come as too much of a surprise. I mean, it came on Sunday, sort of midday. There was a lot of talk, obviously, after the game on Saturday. We will come on to talk about the game, the 4-0 win for Crawley at the New York Stadium. And he looked a bit defeated in that his post-match interviews with BBC Radio Sheffield in particular. He just looked like he knew this was coming, like he could sort of sense it. And his 50th game in charge, it was, of his second spell, turned out to be his last. It was a pretty short statement. I guess we can get into that in terms of the specifics of how it was all handled and what we make to it in terms of what it means going forward with the interim charge. But I guess just immediately, Seb, what do we make to the fact that Steve Evans has been sacked now?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where to sit on this one. I sort of sit in the middle of both camps in that I think ultimately he deserved to go. Rotherham have been really poor this season, absolutely fell below expectations. Think of the players they brought in at the start of the season, think of the whole sort of, I guess, talk when Steve Evans was brought in, when they were in the bottom end of the championship. Steve Evans was going to sort of I don't know, just take over in the idea to rebuild, to go again, and that really hasn't happened and really hasn't kicked off. And Rotherham currently find themselves 16th. So actually, he recently celebrated a year in charge of being at Rotherham. So yeah, it's clearly not worked for him at all. Part of me, thinks it's the right decision. Part of me feels a little bit, and only a little bit, sorry for him, in that he has would have had 8 games of the season left. Rotherham don't have anything to play for. They are safe from relegation, which I'm sure at the start of the season we would have been very surprised for Rotherham to be spoken about in this sort of context. They are safe from relegation, and they are far from the playoff spots, from the top 2 spots as well, the automatic chasing places. So they didn't really have anything to fight for upon the end of the season. Whether that gives even more of a reason to get rid of Evans, but also Evans had nothing to lose in terms of getting to the end of the season. So yeah, I'm a bit mixed. I'm more swayed towards he deserved to go. I think some of the results of late have been really disappointing. 3 defeats in the last 4 games, I think is really poor, especially if you look at the mantra of some of those defeats as well. Has not really been impressive. I think the overall sensitivity of the year, Rotherham haven't been impressive with not too many wins to shout about. So, yeah, I'm surprised it wasn't sort of left until the end of the season, but there was a meeting on Sunday morning, which Evans alluded to in his post-match conference, which is never a good sign. It sort of gave a few hinters as to what could have happened, and certainly did happen then. That there was going to be a meeting between Evans and the board at Rotherham, and it's time to come to an end. So yeah, I think probably about right in terms of Rotherham season as a whole. I'm just surprised it wasn't left to the end of the season.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. in slightly different camp in that I don't think it's too much of a shock that he's gone with this sort of buffer period, if you like, the 8 games before the end of the season, because it gives the interim, who's Matt Hamshaw, it gives him a chance to sort of just see how he gets on, really. And I'm assuming the impression is that he comes in and if he does well over these next few games, that he'll get it permanently in the summer, or perhaps he doesn't do very well and it's, oh, well, we've given it a go, we'll try and find someone else. That seems to be how it feels for me, and that context in terms of him, of course, part of Paul Warren's backroom staff at both Rotherham and more recently Derby, that he's got this chance to take it in as a manager in League One and see how he gets on as a bit of a taster, like a work experience. Obviously, not the right term for it.
Yeah.
He's going for in terms of perhaps that's how I read it anyway. In terms of that might be the decision in terms of just giving him a go and seeing what happens really. And if it comes off, then great. He can be an option in terms of the summer when it comes to finding the full time replacement. I think I summed it up as sort of right decision, but perhaps just a bit too late rather than it being too early in terms of the end of the season. They've waited for their campaign completely dead and buried because I mean they put so much investment in the summer. We were all very optimistic for them in the summer, and I'm sure fans were as well, that Steve Evans had come back and had brought in a lot of experienced players. It was a good-looking team, and it looked like it was going to be up the top end of the table, and it's just never materialised.
Yeah.
And you just have to cut your losses, I think, at a point. The statement itself, we mentioned a minute ago, is really quite brief, just the club confirming that following a meeting with the chairman and manager that the decision had been made to part company with Steve Evans and his three assistants, coaches, if you like, Paul Rayner, Gary Mills and Ian Pledger. They obviously went on to thank him, wish him well and all that sort of thing. But it was quite a short statement for someone who's in his second spell. He's a real figure around the club, which was a little bit of an interesting one, I thought, that they didn't give it sort of the whole 9 yards, if you like.
Yeah, well, obviously, you mentioned sort of second spell. In his first spell, he managed to achieve promotion. So he had that connection with the fans in the first place. But evidently, things seem to have not gone as well second time round. So maybe that is sort of is reflected in the short nature of the statement. I think seems got pretty nasty in the latter stages. Certainly the crowd were chanting at Evans after they went 2-0 down at the weekend, and then when they went 4-0 down, they were chanting sort of higher up towards the board. So and that wasn't the first time that the chants had been aimed at Steve Evans. And when that happens, when fans turn against you, then you always, I don't know, you're counting down the days, really. As soon as the fans have sort of turned against you, the hierarchy in this case, it's the chairman, Tony Stewart, has obviously felt a change is needed. And yeah, the only short statement, interesting, I guess he's only been there, well, just over a year, as I mentioned earlier on. But yeah, I'm not really sure. We can look too much into statement. I guess Rotherham will just want to move on, sort of acknowledge that it's not happened for them. And I'm really surprised that when we mentioned this off air that not more has been made of it in terms of Rotherham's disappointment this season. I think sort of everyone's been like, oh, Rotherham, we're sort of tipped to do well, but they haven't. But that's all right. You know, it's new manager, new players, 20. I think it was over sort of 15, but getting near 20 players that they brought in over summer. And that was the excuse. But there's got to be a time where that excuse doesn't sort of quantify for things going wrong. So yeah, the statement, I'm not too sort of. I don't see.
No, I take your point.
You know what I mean? But yeah, you're right in terms of. I guess the key takeaway from the statement is the fact that they are bringing in someone that has been involved in the club before, in terms of Matt Hamshaw, that has got connections with Paul Warren, who has been at the club before. That sort of proposes a question: is this sort of part of a plan, perhaps by Rotherham, to go in for Paul Warren again? Maybe, who himself has had a really successful first spell at the club with Rotherham before leaving for Derby last year. So, yeah, certainly more questions than answers, maybe. I guess the other coaching staff are yet to be confirmed as well. But what we do know is that Matt Hamshaw is going to lead Rotherham until the end of the season. So yeah, certainly a lot of questions. But one thing we can't have a question about is the fact that Evans deserved to go, and that's exactly what's happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one in terms of that being the other avenue, isn't it? I sort of have put my my eggs in the basket of it perhaps being a scene if Hampshire can be up to the job, whereas the other side of it, of course, the ties to Paul Warne. Is it just lay the groundwork for Paul
Yeah,
Warne in the
yeah,
summer?
yeah.
So we'll have to see in terms of that. We know who the new manager came in at Crawley was. Of course, Scott Lindsay coming back. Everyone's going back to former clubs, aren't they, at the minute?
But it's a
But
trend thing, clearly. Yeah, yeah.
of course, yeah. So he came back in, and it's back-to-back wins for him straight off the bat. A 4-0 victory here to focus on the game itself against Rotherham. They're just 6 points from safety now, and this is a real boost for them. Perhaps not expected the manner of it. And 2 clean sheets in 2 as well. It's been absolutely perfect start for Lindsay since coming back in.
Yeah, it's been incredible, really. Sort of the nigh impossible all of a sudden seems possible. They're now on the same level of points, same points level with Burton Albion, who occupy that final spot. It's just the goal difference is slightly worse for Crawley. But yeah, only 6 points from safety. And the way Crawley are going, you certainly would not rule Crawley out just yet. I know we've spoken many times on here as to how poor Crawley have been at times this season, how certain teams have battered them and walk past the defence, and every time they come forward seem to score. But Crawley have done that exact thing to Rotherham at the weekend, and they have battered Rotherham in their own ground, at their own park, at the New York Stadium, and continued that they good run of form under the sort of management of under the new management. So it's been 2 back-to-back wins, 2 clean sheets as well, and it's all looking pretty good. And yeah, you wouldn't quite rule them out just yet. Momentum clearly on the side. Before that, 2 defeats on the bounce, but they were against Huddersfield and Charlton, two top teams in the division. So they're certainly on a good run of form, and we're going to cover their next game in a bonus preview episode of the midweek fixtures, and that is ones that certainly they'll be licking their lips at in terms of Peterborough. So a chance to make it 3 wins on the bounce, perhaps. But in terms of the Rotherham game, they'll be absolutely over the moon with that, and ultimately that was the straw that brought the camel's back in terms of Steve Evans sacking, going away from home, going to New York Stadium, not New York itself, going to New York Stadium. It's a tough place to go, but they've taken advantage, and they've got absolutely what they deserve. 3 different goal scorers, Kamari Doyle scoring twice, and yeah, mega absolutely result here that I think no one was expecting.
Yeah, proper demolition job. I mean, you're cutting Arctic Monkeys there almost, aren't you? Not from New York City, from Rotherham, in terms of the call again
Unintentionally,
there.
that.
I feel like we're spending too much time together on these podcasts though, because you were saying exactly there what I was about to say myself in terms of plugging our bonus episode, which will be coming tomorrow, I think, by the time this goes out. Looking ahead to Tuesday night. It's our last one of the year in terms of having a full fixture list on a Tuesday that we're going to cover in a bonus episode. So stay tuned for that on podcast platforms and YouTube as well, as we'll preview all 12 games on Tuesday night. Sticking with the reviews, though, 4-0 for Crawley. It was also 4-0 for Charlton, one of the early kickoffs. We'll get to the other one later on as they dispatched Huddersfield at the Valley. And the stat I'm going to send your way before I let you talk about the game itself is that it's 8 wins in a row at home for Charlton. First time since 1980.
Well, yeah, that's fair. I think that just shows that itself. So sort of a bit left for words there, but that itself shows, I guess, a good run
I
of
won't
form.
take credit for it. I did see that on Twitter. So.
You could have got away with it. That shows a good run of form that Charlton are on at the moment in time. They seem to be, as we seem to sort of say every few weeks, really, seem to be the form side on a good run of form, and yeah, have done the absolute demolition job on Huddersfield here. It's a really impressive victory at home. Continue their good home form, and yeah, it's really good going. Nathan Jones' side now up to 4th in the table, and really chasing Wickham, which is probably something we not expected them to say in the few weeks come by for that third choice spot. Maybe even so, you wouldn't quite rule them out of automatic spots, but there is still 8 points and a lot of gaps to be made up in that regard if there was chase automatic spots. But Charlton again continuing their good run of form. Questions again for Huddersfield though against a sort of a fellow playoff chasing rival. I think Huddersfield, every time they seem to have a bad result, they never seem to be in terms of league table position. They never seem to be that affected by it. The result, as a result of Saturday, has put them in 7th, only 1 point clear. And I think sort of almost the league table is saving them a little bit because too many times they've been on the wrong side of results. But actually, the bigger picture of the league table, things are not as bad as they are on the pitch. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, to bounce off that, I think obviously the phrase is 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But I feel like for Huddersfield, it's 1 step forward and then 1 step back. They just sort of stay. To your point there, they are 1 point outside of the playoffs, as you mentioned, just the one place as well. And it's that's exactly how I feel about it. Really, it was the exact opposite of the demolition against Crawley, the 5-1 in Worthington's first game as interim manager, and then immediately losing 4-0 is just sort of both sides of the coin, absolutely diametrically opposed, the two results, and just strange, really, really strange, because Charlton obviously lost against Peterborough last time out, and they've bounced back really well, and Huddersfield are just struggling for consistency. It's been one of the themes of their entire season, and it doesn't seem like it's pulling to a close even after Michael Duff was dismissed. So they're a weird team at Huddersfield. I think we say it a lot that we don't do the preview podcast because predicting scores like Sam and Callum do on the preview show, you've no chance for games like this. A 4-0, obviously, you expect Charlton to come out on top, being that slightly bit high up the table. They're just about still in that race for the automatics. A Huddersfield team who are a little bit inconsistent at the best of times. And that just continues on that vein. Huddersfield absolutely demolished here,
it started pretty. Huddersfield were on the back foot pretty early on. It was within 30 seconds, I think. Matty Godden got Charlton sort of underway, and I guess from then in, you knew that momentum was going to favour Charlton. They're one of these sides. Once they've got their first goal, they do tend to go on and score a couple more, and especially when you've got quality players in your side like Campbell, like Godden, who open the scoring as well. These are good players. Good quality players that are going to punish you. Berry with 2 assists as well against Huddersfield, and the good quality players that have proven so far this season that they're no mean feat. And Huddersfield, after 30 seconds, going 1-0 down, it's already tough going to the Valley as it is. It's already going to be even tougher going 1-0 down after 30 seconds. So yeah, it's really not been great for Huddersfield. As you said, sort of they got lucky in terms of beating Crawley in Worthington's first game, but then to come back and to get battered in the way that they did against Charlton, it's got to be really disappointing and just sort of highlights that inconsistency, I think, in the Huddersfield side. But yeah, credit to Charlton scoring early on. There's almost a sort of curse of scoring too early, that you take that lead and then the other side come into it. But that wasn't the case. They continue to show the dominance, continue to show the force to be reckoned with, really, that they have been all season. And the Saturday was no exception to that as well.
Yeah, Tyrese Campbell with a brace, worth mentioning. Him. The only thing I'll pick out of that before we move on is just the. I don't think they were lucky to have beaten Crawley. I think they did play very well, and I got a little bit of stick for saying that perhaps the result would have been the same with Michael Duff, but perhaps this result would have been the same as if Michael Duff was still in charge, because they've got just dispatched, didn't they? Really, in this game against Charlton. So it'll be interesting to see where they go from here.
Has anyone got any eyes for that burn? Because you just did Huddersfield there. That's.
Well, I'm going to see Huddersfield on Tuesday night. They're against Lincoln on Tuesday, so I'll be able to sort of see it with my own eyes in terms of the inconsistency. I'm sure they'll probably put 5 past Lincoln, sort of go back the other way and tip the scales a little bit. But the team that they've been leapfrogged by is Reading. They won 3-1 against Peterborough United. 2 really young teams, and Darren McAntony, the Peterborough chairman, said this in a tweet, sort of saying it was a great advert for the division. 2 really young teams, and that is a really nice sort of theme to pick out of the game, because it is two sides who focus a lot on young players in terms of bringing them through. I mean, Reading have been forced to a little bit, but they've been very good at relying on the youth. And Peterborough, obviously, that is essential in terms of their whole model for the football club. So that was a nice part of the game, I think, to pick out. But the result is the key aspect, and that is Reading, another win for them. And despite everything going off the field that we talked about last week, and I spoke to Andy Preston, who is the editor at Reading today, and that'll obviously still be up on YouTube and podcast streams if you want to go back, and that's a good insight into the off-the-field issues at Reading. I'm sure we'll get Andy back on once there's an update in terms of that situation. But on the field, they're 11 unbeaten. And it's quite remarkable, really, that they've managed to do that in the backdrop of all the other issues going on. It looked a pretty even game on the stats. The last thing I'll say on it, in that Peterborough actually had a slightly better XG, 2.03 to 1.87 and 15 shots to 12. But Reading clinical, got the 3 goals, and yeah, I mean, a superb victory for them.
It's not like you to be using XG.
I know it's catching, I think.
It's just the same, Jamie. Yeah, but you're right in terms of Reading just dominant, continuing sort of on the pitch to ignore matters off the pitch that we covered last week, as you said in our preview episode there. But yeah, continue to sort of almost deny expectations and shut down, dismiss any claims that they are going to be distracted, because they're just continuing on this good run of form in 6th in the league, which, you know, we've spoke many times that after the manager left, the Ruben Sellers, that they might have dipped in form slightly, but nevertheless they've actually kept in and around the playoff chasing pack, and at the minute sit 6th, 1 place above Huddersfield Town, and that's kudos to Noel Hunt, it's kudos to the players, it's kudos to anyone involved in Reading Football Club, sort of on the pitch, giving fans something to cheer about, making the team exceptional, making the team sort of competitive, and it's proven absolute dividend. A couple of players on the score sheet, Harvey Nibbs and Charlie Savage, are both been with the club a couple of seasons now. Charlie Savage, only 21 years of age, of course, the son of Robbie. So he grabbed the 3rd goal for Reading. Yeah, 3 goals. First one actually came from a really nice little passing move around the 18-yard area, and actually came off Peterborough defender Hughes, which, you know, I guess it goes down as an own goal, but actually the work beforehand to force that own goal, Reading passed it really nicely around that 18-yard area, and so yeah, really good finish to open the score, and then a couple of good finishes from Nibbs and Savage as well. The only disappointment there'll be is conceding sort of after that they went through and up. But when you concede to a player like Poku, who we've spoken about many times on here, he has that quality finish. We've not seen that enough times this season because he's been out injured, and it's a real disappointment. But actually, his impact since coming back has been really important and really crucial for Peterborough. But yeah, as for Reading, they were delighted to continue their sort of unbeaten run going in the league, and hopefully it can continue and take advantage of the likes of Huddersfield and Bolton not sort of getting the successes that perhaps Reading have been doing, and just keep ticking along and keep maintaining that playoff spot. But yeah, credit to Noel Hunt and the players for stepping up despite the ongoing matters off the field as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you mentioned Poku, just to sort of back that assessment up. Last season, he had 12 goals and 8 assists in 49 all-competition games, and this season, with the injuries, has played 24 games so far, so just under half, and he's got the same amount of assists, 8 and 11 goals. So he's only 1 goal behind, 1 goal involvement behind his tally from last season, and he's done it in half the games, and obviously a few still to go. So he's back at it, is Poku, and obviously was instrumental in terms of the victory over Charlton before this one. So a boost, the silver lining, perhaps, for Peterborough there. But we're going to head to a quick break, and then on the other side of it, talk about victories for Blackpool, Stockport and Birmingham. Welcome back then to the League One Lowdown. Myself, Jamie Johnson, and Seb Jones. Next, we'll head to Blackpool. 2-1 for them against Bolton, and both strikers on the score sheet once more. Niall Ennis has 2 in 2, and Fletcher, well, he's got 4 in 5. He had the assist as well. It's 5 goal involvements in as many games. They've been an absolute revelation, those front two, and they got both of the goals between them, Seb.
Yeah, and sort of I continue their good reform because they both of them grabbed the 2 goals in the win against Northampton the week before as well, which you spoke about on here. Yeah, it's good to see the attacking players sort of stepping up, if you like, in a season that has, I'd say, overall been disappointing for Blackpool, but they managed to get a solid formation in terms of 4-4-2 and sort of the latter part of the season with the front two of Fletcher and Ennis. And yeah, they've been a real sort of revelation, a bit of a mismatch, misjointed too, but to somehow seem to make it work, which is the most important thing in terms of sort of the tall nature of Fletcher and then the pace of Ennis in behind as well. Yeah, it's good to see them both on the score sheets. Ennis now with 6 goals since joining in January, and Fletcher with 11 goals and 4 assists since the start of the season. So yeah, Blackpool seem to have sort of a solid 11, which is not always the case for quite a lot of sides in League One. Seems to be quite a bit of chop and changing, but very rarely does as Steve Bruce in the last few weeks been making any changes to his starting team. So yeah, really good win, and I guess it doesn't really do much for them. We've spoke many times in terms of they're probably out of the playoff race, but they just want to finish the season on a high. What it does do is actually impact Bolton quite a bit. You know, the 2-1 victory that the Blackpool managed to gain means that the Bolton drop out of the playoff positions down to 8th, so 2 points off. Again, sort of, you know, it's pretty catchable, but they have to rely on them winning and the results elsewhere going in their favour. But it'd be disappointing for Stephen Schumacher, given his good run of form when he first took over. That's now 3 defeats on the bounce after the result on Saturday. So having started so well, it's sort of just turned a corner and not for the better.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, as you say, 3 losses in a row: Bristol Rovers, Stockport, and then this one here against Blackpool. And obviously, Bristol Rovers fighting for their lives down the bottom of the table. Stockport and Blackpool are challenging for the same positions that Bolton want to get into. So that defeats against those teams in and around you are real killers. And you say down to 8th, couple of points outside the playoffs, and then they need to put it right, of course, on Tuesday night in a bit of a derby away against Wigan, that they just need to pick up a victory just to try and get themselves back on track, because this is a real like a sucker punch a little bit, this game, in terms of losing to Blackpool. And they won't have Aaron Morley in midweek. He got sent off in injury time, a couple of yellow cards.
Yeah,
For him.
Stupid, really. Just a couple of yellow cards within a matter of minutes right at the end of the game. It's sort of, on the face of it, it looks a bit stupid, really. You know, when I get sort of fighting until the end and fighting until the whistle, but you know, you're
It's
right.
frustration, perhaps,
It's
isn't
frustration, yeah, perhaps it is that, but Bolton then will be without him in what is a pretty crucial game, and like I said, a derby as well. So yeah, frustration, I think, just growing too much.
The only other point I wanted to bring out really was that it's 29% possession Blackpool had in this game, and they come out on top. I think it shows you their different sort of style under Steve Bruce, especially at home. I don't think you see that too often in terms of a team being willing to do that at home, but it's getting them results. They've lost just one of their last 6 games and are really in the mix now. It's 5 points behind the playoffs and behind 6th place Reading, that's their next opponent. We'll obviously talk about that in our bonus preview show, and they're really in the mix now. And I think I wrote them off a couple of weeks ago alongside Blackpool. You, Seb, you stuck by them, so you can take the plaudits there in terms of the fact that they're still in this fight. And there are quite a few teams in and around that mix now, and Blackpool are definitely one of them in terms of the sides fighting for to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, we seem to have swapped roles here now, because despite their good run of form, and you know, I'm going to praise them for the good run of form. I think it's been exceptional. They finally sort of found a formula that fits and is working over the past few weeks. I don't think that I think that they're out of the playoff running. I think the teams above them just have that extra few points on board, that extra quality in the sides that Blackpool don't have. And I think that they haven't had a really strong finish to the season, but I just think it's not been enough for them to properly chase the pack. Which is sort of more the way you were thinking a few weeks ago in terms of
I mean,
ruling
I
out
don't think they're
Blackpool.
going to do it, but I think they're in the mix at the very least, and they're
At
within
least give
touching
us some.
distance, if you like.
At least give us some sort of drama, let's hype it up a little bit more. But no, never say never, and we've seen
Well, that's it.
things
Yeah.
happen. We mentioned sort of Bolton on who were defeated by Blackpool on a poor form. Huddersfield themselves as well have just suffered quite a heavy defeat. So who knows? Anything could happen. But it is 5 points, and it is 3 places between Blackpool and the 6th place side, which at the minute is Reading. So the odds are not stacked in their favour. Doesn't mean to rule it out completely, but I would see it as unlikely.
Yeah, no, I can go along with that. But Stockport are a little bit further up the table and firmly in the playoffs. They are 5th. They remain there with victory against Burton. Albion, the other of the 12:30 kickoffs, and they've got a tiny bit of a buffer. It's 6 points between themselves and Reading, though that pack below them all have a game in hand, so that could be reduced, cut in half to 3. But this one, a good victory for them. Pretty easy going until about 10 minutes to go, where it was all sort of panic stations with Burton fighting and trying to get something out of the game. They got a goal to bring it back to 2-1 and were knocking on the door a little bit and trying to find an unlikely equaliser. Didn't do it, though, in the end. And Stockport saw out an important 3 points because they've been on a little bit sort of thin ice in terms of injuries, especially in defence with Pye being out injured. They boosted slightly by Hill coming back in, which has been able to sort of redistribute that and balance that out a little bit. Because I know it's something we touched on a few weeks ago. Last time we sort of went in a bit more detail on Stockport, that they were having issues in terms of numbers defensively, though they seem to just be riding the crest of the wave enough to stay in the playoff mix, and that they're firmly in there. It's in their hands, of course, in 5th. So if they carry on as they are, they'll be. I mean, it's been a remarkable season, and they're able to finish it in the same sort of style. If they can stay in the playoffs, for them, I'll hand to you in a second. Then on the other side of it, of course, Burton. They're 5 points from safety, game in hand for them, and no real change in that regard. Bristol was also losing, but an important result for Stockport and I guess as well Burton.
Yeah, you set it up really nicely there. Yeah, I think it's always a testament to the opposition attack when the goalkeeper is awarded the man of the match, and that was the case with Corey Adai. 3 saves and 1.52 goals prevented. Look at me with the stats here. So sort of him showing him standing tall, preventing any sort of Burton attack. He'll be disappointed to concede the goal late. It was a Larson in the 89th minute for Burton. But up to that point, Stockport were leading by 2-0. Carl Wootton and Tanto Alafa, the 2 attackers for Stockport on the score sheet. But yeah, Stockport just continue just to tick along really nicely in 5th place, well and firmly into playoff places. As you said, they've established a bit of a gap between themselves and Reading in 6th, put 4 points. So yeah, it's been a really successful season. Although that's not to say that they weren't put under pressure by Burton Albion, and results for Stockport have been a little bit inconsistent over the past few weeks. A couple of draws and then winning away to Bolton, losing away to Wrexham. So it's a good chance to put things back right at home again against Burton Albion. But yeah, Burton, you mentioned, right down at the bottom of the league table. They looked in a pretty strong position to perhaps fight the relegation battle, but as results of late have not fallen in their favour, bearing the win at Shrewsbury last time out, has been a couple of defeats in their last 3 games, and things are not as good as they once looked for Burton Albion. 6 points between themselves and Bristol Rovers, who also lost, but now also they're on the same points as Crawley, as we mentioned earlier on. So not only they basically got someone looking behind them and on the back, on the shoulder. Not only do Burton have to focus on themselves, you have to focus on Crawley, what Crawley doing in their fight for survival as well. So we're in for a very exciting finish. But Burton are not in as good a position as they were just a few weeks ago when Guy Boyer first took over. In the first couple of months of Boyer taking over, the results were really positive and really good. But taking it a slight dip, well, more than a slight dip, I think, in the past few weeks.
Yeah, but it's just one win in 5 actually since they beat Lincoln a bit smash and grab that game 1-0, and since then I remember talking after that game thinking that would sort of spur them on a little bit, and if they can carry on that vein of things in terms of being just being able to play for moments and pick up goals and take chances, that they would be able to get on a decent bit of run. They've not been able to do that over recent weeks. Just to correct myself on something I said a moment ago, Ethan Pye was sent off. Obviously, he's not injured. He was sent off in this game. He'll miss the next one for 2 yellow cards. The other note really that both strikers scored exactly the same to the Blackpool 2-1 victory. Alafi and Wooten both on the score sheet, and Wooten ends his dry spell. He's not scored since February 1st before this game. He had 9 without and got a goal when it mattered. Of course, the 2 goals seeing his side to victory, and positive signs there.
Yeah, and both, just to sort of add on to that, both the striker scoring sees both players going on to 8 goals for the season, which I think is really good going. Wooten with 6 assists and Alafi with 2 assists as well, which are all really good numbers, really good figures for a side. We can't forget that we just promoted from League Two. These are players that were playing in League Two last season with Stockport that have been trusted to lead the line from the off in a league higher than they were in last season, and they've continued that they're a good run of numbers. I'm sure they're going to reach 10, if not more than that, by the end of the season. And for a first year in League One, I don't think that's bad going at all for the pair of them.
Yeah, exactly that. And that takes us on to our final game, which is of the top of the table versus bottom of the table, really. Birmingham 4-1 against Shrewsbury. We'll touch on Michael Appleton. This was his first game in charge after coming in. It was also, everything's happened since we last spoke in terms of the review show last week, with Gareth Ainsworth sort of out of nowhere leaving the club, joining Gillingham, and then Michael Appleton very swiftly taking his place. We'll come to that. Let's just do the game first. Alfie May on the score sheet twice. David and Laird with goals as well. And Alfie May has not been sort of the focus point for Birmingham. He's got 13 goals though this season, 20 goal involvements in 48 games. And with Jay Stansfield taking all the plaudits, and I mean at Charlton and Cheltenham, he was the man. But even without that tag, he's scoring heaps of goals, and a brace here helped lead Birmingham to victory. I guess we'll, as I say, come to Michael Appleton in a second. But the game itself, not a whole lot to say, obviously, being the most expected result of top of the table, doing a real job on bottom of the table.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that at all in terms of probably what we expected in terms of results. Obviously, hard to predict the scoreline in this league, but you mentioned Alfie May. I think he absolutely sort of has not been given the chance as such this season because, and that's not sort of down to him as such, it's down to the other players in the Birmingham attack doing well. You mentioned Stansfield. A couple of other sort of noticeable players that have been performing, include Anderson whenever he's played, and Dowell as well. In Water in midfield, sort of is a bit of an attacking option as well. So May sort of struggled, but to get 2 goals off the bench, he only came off the bench on the 73rd minute, so just less than 20 minutes, and grabbing 2 goals out of the 4 that Birmingham scored. And the other 2 that May didn't score were both from set pieces, which I think will really please the Birmingham coaching staff. A couple of assists from Leonard and Dowell. Yeah, Davis and Laird, 2 of the back 4, getting on the end of set piece deliveries and set piece sort of routines, which I think will please them, sort of Birmingham scoring through different ways. But yeah, Alfie May, good to see him on the score sheet. Stansfield, we know how much of a good player he is. We know his qualities, but actually, when the person coming off the bench to replace you is Alfie May, and his talents and his goal scoring record in the last few years whilst in League One, I think it's pretty admirable. 27 goals last year for Charlton, and the year before that, 22 with Cheltenham, and he's just such a good player. And it's it's a shame he didn't stay at Charlton, but ultimately sort of the offer came from Birmingham, and you can't really say no in terms of what we've seen them build this season. But I guess the caveat with that is that he was always going to have to play second fiddle to Stansfield, which he's done. But every time he's been asked to step up, he's clearly sort of shown his qualities and capabilities, and that's what being in a squad is all about, sort of, and having that squad depth. And those sides at the top of the league table, like Birmingham, yes, spend a lot of money, but ultimately they have that squad depth, which wins your league titles, and that's what Birmingham are going to do.
Yeah, exactly that. It's only a matter of time, isn't it? 9 points clear. They are of Wrexham and a couple of games in hand. Too.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. As for Shrewsbury as well, it's sort of been a bit of a manic.
Well,
week
yeah. I mean, I was going to bring you on to
yeah.
Michael Appleton there. Of course, with Ainsworth leaving the club very just sort of unbelievable circumstances. Of course, the preview guys sort of spoke about that in really great detail. Mark Appleton since taking up the job. For me, I guess I just see it as a win-win for Michael Appleton, and not so much for Shrewsbury. I think they can't be too picky, can they? They are going to get relegated no matter who they bring in. And Michael Appleton, there's no reason why he wouldn't take it, really, because if Shrewsbury go down, it's not his fault. If he manages to get a few results, and even if they do still go down, which is obviously almost I don't even know how to sort of phrase it. It's going to happen.
It's not going to happen. It's
almost
not going to happen.
certain that they'll go down. And Michael Appleton, if he can pick up a few results and just show a bit more life in this Shrewsbury team, that everyone go, oh, well, he's doing something different to Gareth Ainsworth. He's making the team look better than Gareth Ainsworth, and he just puts him back in the shop window a little bit, I think, and it sets him up nicely for the summer that he can stay on with Shrewsbury if he sees that he can get them promoted next season, or perhaps then he'll step back out and try for a different League One club, because it's just till the end of the season this contract has been put on, the short-term deal for him. So I think it's a positive for Appleton in terms of what could come for him if obviously it goes well. I mean, if it goes badly, then it doesn't reflect awfully on him in terms of the fact that they'll be going down anyway. But if he can show just a little bit of a sign of life that they can pick up a couple of wins or just something like that and improve from what Gareth Ainsworth had the team doing, then I think it's a real positive for him, though, obviously. The worst possible start travelling to Birmingham.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you probably couldn't have asked for a worse side to face in your first match as a manager. Just quickly on sort of the whole Ainsworth leaving debacle, I think it's quite bizarre, really, in terms of he was the face of the season ticket campaign that had just recently been released, and a little bit similar to the Apple situation, in that Shrewsbury sort of more or less knew that they were going to be relegated, I think, in the back of their minds, and Ainsworth was going to be part of this big rebuild project. Yes, when he first came in, results were really positive, but I think it was sort of that the honeymoon period was over pretty quickly, and reality struck in terms of Shrewsbury did not have enough to survive, and still don't have enough to survive. And I sort of agree with what you're saying in terms of they are almost set, and I say almost because anything can happen, but I think very, very certain to be relegated this season. So yeah, I think the Appleton one appointment is a weird one. I'm not really sure why they didn't do perhaps what we've seen at Rotherham or Huddersfield and just appoint internally just till the end of the season. I think it's a bit weird to bring Appleton in for the short length that he has been brought in for. But like you say, I guess it's a win-win for Appleton in that he's got a chance to impress, whether that be with Shrewsbury next season or whether that be with other clubs that will have seen the impact in the short space of time that he has been at Shrewsbury. So yeah, it's interesting. I guess Shrewsbury wants someone experienced, and Appleton is exactly that, rather than someone's first managerial experience, even albeit on an interim basis. To sort of lead them through to the end of the season. So yeah, Appleton, I agree. Actually, I'm not really thought about it that way. It's a win-win for him, but it's all a bit weird. And I guess they got the goal away at Birmingham, and that gave the fans something to cheer about at least. But I think
the consolation at the end, wasn't it?
I think that's about it in terms of the performance. It's always going to be tough when you go to Birmingham and when you go to St Andrews. So yeah, I can't blame them too much for the result.
Yeah, well, they sit ahead of Wrexham. They've lost just one of their last 7 and stay in that second place with a 2-0 win at Exeter. Wycombe Wanderers, they beat Lincoln City 1-0, a late red card for Paudie O'Connor, the Lincoln skipper, in that one. It was 1-1 draws for both Wigan, Barnsley and Cambridge, Northampton. It's 5 without victory now for Barnsley. There were another point to add to the tally. Wigan equalising after Davies Keillor-Dunn opened the scoring, and Northampton they add a point on in a similar way to Wigan in terms of fighting against those teams in and around them and those relegation rivals that Northampton have got. They've gained very slightly with everyone below them dropping points. Mansfield 2-1 victory for them away to Bristol Rovers. They are one of those relegation rivals I mentioned in terms of Northampton. It's 3 defeats in a row. They've got Birmingham as well coming up, and after 14, 15, whatever it was in terms of games without victory for Mansfield, they've managed to win 2 on the bounce. His football works in very strange ways. And finally, that leaves us with Thursday's game, which was Leyton Orient winning 1-0 against Stephen as Charlie Kelman. I got quite well through there until that bit. Charlie Kelman, 15 for the season in the league for him, and 3 points they are now behind the playoff places. So that rounds us up nicely for all the games from Saturday. And as we mentioned earlier on, we'll be back tomorrow previewing Tuesday night, all 12 games again. It's 24 teams. Everyone's back in action for the final run of midweek fixtures this season as we get to that crunch time in the campaign. Myself, Jamie Johnson, Seb Jones, thank you for joining us. You're on YouTube or Spotify, wherever it is. Do give us a like, or if you are especially on YouTube, subscribe as we try and hunt down the 1,000 subscriber mark. So thank you for watching or listening, and we'll be back, as I say, for our bonus preview show.